Are you constantly struggling to quote profitably? Do you even know what margins you need to make a desirable profit from your quote? If not, you're in the right place. Welcome to How to Quote Profitably and Efficiently, Part 2 of our 4-part series, Blueprint to Profit Systems and Time, brought to you by Electrical Business, Onsite, HPAC, SP&T, Connections Plus, and Next Level. We have registrants from all over Canada, including the territories, so welcome to you all. A special thank you to Schneider Electric, sponsor of this 4-part series. By stepping up to support our delivery of these training sessions, Schneider Electric shows how deeply committed it is to you and your success as a trades business owner. Please check them out. Now, Andrew Houston is not just your presenter. He's your coach, and this is much more than just a PowerPoint presentation. You will get out what you put in. Andrew has been coaching trades business owners for nearly a decade, helping them improve their business skills so they can achieve their personal and professional goals. He is the owner and founder of Profit for Contractors, and you can find his columns, tradie tip videos, and recordings of past webinars at ebmag.com. Andrew will invite your feedback throughout the presentation, but feel free to send him a question via your control panel. Afterward, there may be time for Q&A before we wrap things up. And with that, I will hand it over to Andrew Houston. Andrew.
Hey, Anthony, thank you so much for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here to help everybody that's on this call today. So let's just make sure that you're actually at the right place. So if you guys want to, as Anthony mentioned, you want to master your pricing, you want to get better control of quoting profitably every time instead of just sometimes, then you come to the right place. Look, let's face it. Being an owner in any type of contracting business, from home building, being a general contractor, specialized trade, can be tough, especially when there's so much competition out there, whether that's the health and safety, working at height. We've got, in a lot of cases, shortages of skilled trades, whether that's apprentices or licensed tradies. So it can be tough. So it's even that much more important that we want to control the things that we can control. And one of the things that I want you to get out of today's presentation is that you can get better control of how you price your jobs. You can get better control of making sure that you're quoting so that you are profitable and ensuring that you know what you got to do and how you got to use a system to price profitably. So you should have received, and you should have in the handout section of the control panel, let's make sure that you guys have that as well, a handout. It's called the Margin to Markup Calculator, and we're going to be referencing that later on in today's presentation. It's an amazing tool that a lot of our clients get tremendous value from and really helps give them insights on how to quote profitably and systemize their quoting process. Okay, so at the end of today's presentation, I want to make sure that you guys are able to plan for profits when you're doing your pricing versus hoping for profits. The typical fears and frustrations that might resonate with you guys, when it comes to quoting profitably, is that you're not sure what to include in your pricing to guarantee, that you actually are quoting properly and that you are ensuring that you're profitable. Another frustration is that we don't know, how to adjust the pricing when things are slow or things are busy for the different cycles in our business, different times of the year. And again, everybody on this call are going to have different cycles in their business, but we want to be able to know how to adjust, during those different times. And one of the biggest fears that people have when they're trying to quote profitably, is that they're quoting themselves out of business. This is probably one of the biggest ones that I hear from contractors a lot. They come to the end of the year, they're sitting down with their accountant, and the accountant says, "Hey, here's the results that you've got," and the contractor looks at them, or the builder or GC, and goes, "Seriously? I thought I was going to make a lot more profit than that." So we don't want to get to the end of the year. Okay, we don't want to have that situation moving forward, and this is going to be some of the principles that we're going to be teaching today to help with that. So the alternative team, if we get this right, when we learn these principles and apply them today, we're going to be able to not just quote, but we're going to be able to win jobs, and we're going to be able to make a profit. Okay, and let's face it, just because somebody's been doing something for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30. It really does not define whether or not you're doing something the right way or you're doing something the wrong way. If you do have bad habits, if you do have cracks in your foundation on how you quote, those things will continue until you address them, okay, for the life of the business. So, when we get this right, we're able to adjust the pricing, like I was saying before, when sales fluctuate, so that we stay in the black versus the red. And this is a big one. At the end of the day, I want you guys to have insights so that you know how you can go about setting profit targets, setting budgets per year, per month, per week, in some cases per day, so that we can scale the business. So let's get into these top 3 principles to price profitably. Here's the number 1 principle. The number 1 principle is that, everybody's break-even margin is different. So let me just explain to you very quickly. We're going to get in depth into each of these principles in a second. But your break-even margin is basically how much margin you need to put on your quotes to cover your overhead expenses, basically to keep the lights on. Okay, and overhead expenses in a nutshell are any expenses that are not directly related to doing the work. Okay, so that could be leases, could be salaries, could be keeping, it could be the hydro, all those different things that whether or not you make a sale or not, you've got to pay those bills. And when we get this right, when we understand our break-even margin, we're able to answer the question of, and maybe you wonder this, how is it that some contractors can quote so low and still stay in business? Okay. Once you understand this, you'll not only be able to answer this question, but we'll be able to use our break-even margin to calculate, which I get excited about, our profit break-even margin, which is where it gets, exciting, because now we can start focusing on what do we got to put in our quotes to ensure that we're profitable versus just, breaking even. The second principle number 2, is creating a plan for setting profit targets and budgets, because hoping for profits it's not a good plan. Okay. No offense to anybody on the call, but you can work crazy hard in your contracting business, and if you just don't understand or you don't get these principles right and apply them, working hard is not going to solve the problem. It might put a Band-Aid on things, but it's not going to address the core problem, which is that you need to systemize and truly understand what needs to be involved when you're quoting jobs. And again, I don't care what kind of contractor you are on this call, these principles are directly applicable to everybody. Principle number 3, you need to know the difference between margin and markup, okay? This is the third principle. Not applying this can easily take away 5 to, even up to 9% or more in profits on your bottom line, just not truly understanding the difference between these two. It's one of the main reasons why your accountants, tend to see much lower profits at the end of the year than what you've been putting on your quotes. Okay, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the main reasons. So let's get deep into this. Okay, let's get into the first principle. The reality is that every contracting business is different in what it costs them to run their business. This could be the mere size of your business. It could be, the different location that you're in. One contracting company that's in Toronto versus Ottawa versus Vancouver versus other places in the world are going to have different expenses because cost of living varies. The amount that it costs you to pay your crews is going to vary, and the list goes on. So we need to adjust how we price to ensure that we're covering off our costs. That's the very first step that we need to do. This is what I call your break-even margin. Okay. Now we're about to do a little math today that everybody can learn, and I guarantee it that you guys are going to be able to grasp this, that you're going to be able to take this information and apply it quite quickly to your business. Now look, I know math might not be the most exciting. I know for me it's not the most exciting, but the results that we can get out of knowing some of these basic formulas and approaches is where it gets exciting, okay? So one of my contractors constantly struggled in pricing job after job, Gaetan Daze here, and in a lot of cases, I'm not sure why that went ahead, but in a lot of cases, we're hitting on average 20 to 25% gross profit on the jobs that they did. But at the end of the year, they were barely making any money. In some cases, we're at a deficit. I had him understand his break-even margin, and he realized that basically, A, he wasn't putting enough margin on his jobs to even cover his overhead. B, we did an analysis to determine what type of work was the easiest to make a profit on, and we got rid of the least profitable work, and then we got focused, right? We got focused on getting the work that was the most profitable, that gave the greatest return on investment, from marketing to sales, to strategizing, to getting his team to be more efficient with those specific types of work. His sales in high profit jobs increased from 3.8 million to 5.2 million, and the net effect was doubling his profits in just 12 months. Now, this is a 24-year-old business. So, it's never too late to get this. I guess that's one of the main points I wanted to stress to you. It's never too late. But enough about Gaetan. Let's focus in on how you can get the same insight. So the first thing that we need to do is let's break down this formula of what defines our break-even margin. So our break-even margin is basically the margin that we need to use on our quotes to cover our overhead expenses. So when we're looking at this, there's two core components that we need to look at this stage: our fixed costs and our sales. For the sake of an example, let's just picture that our fixed costs, again, the leases for the trucks, the hydro, the telephone bills, the expenses to keep the building running. Let's just say $250K. Their total sales is $1 million. Their break-even margin that they would have to use on their quotes just to cover their overhead expenses is 25%. Okay? So what does this mean for you? Well, let's take a look at, let's just call this contractor A. And then we want to look at contractor B. See what a bit of a difference can have on your break-even margin. Let's say that this contractor B is the same fixed cost, but their sales are a little bit higher. Well, say a little bit more than just a little bit. We would be looking at, for contractor B, an 18% break-even margin. So look at this. Look at these two numbers, okay? When I was dealing with Gates, and actually this applies to a lot of contractors that you guys might be able to relate to this, is, I asked them, I'll ask a lot of clients, I go, so how did you come up with what margin to use? Well, I talked to a fellow contractor that does what I do, and he tells me that he puts 18 points on his jobs. I said, okay, so that's why you're using that number. Yeah. Well, there's a major problem with that. Okay, like I said earlier with this principle, every single contractor is different. This proves the point. Okay, that every single contractor, every single person on this call is going to have different fixed costs, and we haven't even adjusted that, and they're going to have different sales. So you need to understand this, because if in Gaetan's case, he was putting a certain amount of margin on his jobs, and he was trying to copy what the other contractors in the area were doing, but guess what? That was barely even covering what his overhead costs are. So you need to understand this. And look at, just with this change here, the delta between 25% and 18% is a whopping 28% difference. Okay? So you need to understand your break-even margin. But guess what? That is not enough. We need to figure out what I call, once we got to this stage, what I love focusing in on, hence the name of the company, Profit for Contractors, your profit break-even margin. Now, what the heck is your profit break-even margin? Your profit break-even margin is simply how much profit that you want to make. It could be at the end of the year. That's what we're going to look at right now. It could be, quarter by quarter, but let's just say at the end of the year, so that we know what we need to add on to this formula, so that we define what our profit break-even margin is that we're going to use on the quotes that we do. So when we're looking at this, it's as simple as just adding whatever it is that you want your profit to be at the end of the year to your fixed cost, dividing it by your sales. So if our fixed cost, let's just pretend that we're contractor A, $250,000. We're going to take 250K. Say we want to make, after we pay our salary, because remember, team, you got to pay yourself first. After we pay everybody else's salary, after we pay all those fixed costs, we want to make an additional $100,000 in profit. All we're going to do is we're going to add that to our current fixed cost. So 250 plus 100K is 350 divided by a million. Our profit break-even margin that we need to use on our jobs is 35%. Okay, 25% for contractor A is going to give us a break-even, but we don't want that. We want to use a margin that we know is going to make us a profit. Okay, and that in this case is 35%. Okay, so this was a huge thing that we looked at for Gayton, and what we were able to do, taking this to the next level, was that we were able to break this down per department. We were able to break this down. You could look at a type of work that you do, or per department, something similar. And we were able to identify that there was a lot of work that he was doing, a lot of types of work that he was doing that was really difficult to make high margins on. But it took a lot of effort. There was a lot of overhead required to do that. Very quickly, we were able to isolate those types of jobs, in some cases, types of clients, and in all honesty, get rid of them. We were able to then focus in on the highest profit areas, and at which, by the way, when I first started working with Gayton, he didn't even focus in on those areas, so they were completely neglected. Okay. So you want to make sure, guys, that you break this down, that you understand your break-even margin, and that you understand your profit break-even margin specific to you. So let's come back to this. So I want you guys to give me some insights. I really want your feedback on this. I want you to tell me, how will these insights on understanding your break-even and profit break-even margin help you? So I'm going to give you guys 10 to 15 seconds to type that into the chat box. Mike says, I've never even considered adding profit to my costs. Excellent. Love it, Mike. That's why you're on this call, man. That's why you're on this call. Is to improve things, okay, to see things differently. And like I said before, it's never too late. So we got a lot of people on the call today. I want as many people as possible. I'll give you guys 5 more seconds to participate here, to give me some feedback. Andy says, budget for success. You got it, Andy. Yep. Les says, this all works well for upcoming year sales. We know, what if sales fluctuate year to year? Oh my God, Les, what an excellent question. Well, Les, one of the things that we've got to look at when we're looking at forecasting, you're absolutely right. We're going to touch on this in a second as far as how to plan for profits, is you have to become, I hate to say it, you have to become a really good estimator. When I say estimator, I'm not talking about just an estimator that goes and estimates jobs. You need to become a really good estimator in your business. You need to be looking at trends less. You need to be understanding the environment that you're around, understanding how many jobs that you got on the table, what's your conversion rate. Understanding those different aspects can allow you to start forecasting how much work you're going to get before you actually land the jobs. And looking at your trends in the past to see what's worked and what hasn't worked is going to give you a really good ability to estimate. But Les, here's the reality. Hate to tell you, but the reality is that you're going to have to estimate. Okay, you're going to have to estimate what the future looks like, because there's no guarantee of the future, but you can get pretty good at it and pretty consistent at it. So hopefully that helps your question. John says it's going to help you make more money on jobs. Absolutely. Monica says we never added overhead costs. I'm loving that you guys are getting these insights. Henry says it provides a standard against which to compare prices to. Look, team, one of the key things that I was able to help Gayton with was to get these results, was doing an analysis, all right, to ensure that he was applying, I cannot stress this enough, the right numbers to these formulas. Let's face it, it's great, it's great to have these formulas. You do not want to put in the wrong numbers, okay? It's one thing, like I said before, to use these formulas. It's another thing to use the right numbers, right? Remember the old garbage in, garbage out, right? So let's get into principle number 2. Planning versus hoping for profit. If we want to get the profits that we want out of our contracting business, we need to plan for profits versus hoping for them. All successful business owners, I don't care what kind of business they're in, they learn the importance of planning, okay? If we don't set targets, you're just going to get whatever the world throws at you. And in most times, it's not what you want or what you need. When we use these insights that we just learned on determine our break-even and break-even profit margin, it allows us to take back control of our profits and start creating a plan. So look, we all have, I have all of our Profit for Contractors clients plan for profits. You know, Tyler Faith, was in the transition of taking over his dad's a 44-year-old business. Actually, it was a third generation business. You can see there's his grandpa, his dad, and himself. Pretty cool. If over the 44 years, the business was a complete roller coaster. Okay, there were some good years, some bad years, some really bad years, some losses. I'm sure you guys can relate. Some of you people on the call can relate to this. Tyler didn't want the roller coaster business that his grandpa and his dad had. He wanted by systems to ensure that he was on track. So knowing his break-even and his profit break-even margin gave him the knowledge to create a dashboard, sort of like a car, right? Sure, most people got to work today, but in some form of a vehicle. So like a dashboard in a vehicle with a GPS to know and to ensure that he knew where he was going and knew what he had to do to hit his profit targets. So by doing this, he was able to systemize areas of his business, making his team more efficient, more effective, ensuring he was getting the right clients and taking his leadership to the next level. He was able to get his team involved, and that's so key for everybody on this call. I mean, you guys got enough on your plate, to start delegating, but to get your team involved because your team is going to help you win or fail. That's just the way that it is. So having a plan in place allowed him to back it by rules of the game so that everybody could follow and know what a win was and what a loss was. In 2 months, he went from not being profitable to increasing his profits by 90% in a very short period of time. Hundreds of thousands of dollars improvement on the bottom line. But again, I want to share this with you guys because, again, it's never too late. I mean, a 44-year-old business, seriously? I mean, there's a lot of things that they were doing right. But definitely one of the areas that they were struggling was this consistency in growing the business profitably, okay? So enough about Tyler. In the previous previous iPad that I showed you guys, the break-even margin was 25%, all right? So we're going to try and carry that through so that we're using this example consistently throughout the presentation. So just let's focus that our profit break-even is equal to 35%, and our break-even is equal to 25%, okay? So we're all on the same page. So when we're looking at planning this out, here's what we have to look at. We have to consider our sales. We have to consider our sales over time. And remember we were talking about our fixed costs, right? Our fixed costs tend to be quite consistent, okay? So again, this is not your business per se. Yes, there's going to be fluctuations in different contracting businesses, but for today's example, just follow me through on the principles of how this graph and it's going to go up and up and up, maybe not so linear, but for our call today, that's how we're going to look at it. Our variable expenses tend to go up with our sales, but we eventually want them to start going down. And what do I mean by them going down? You want this gap to get greater and greater, and that gap will get greater and greater when you become more efficient, when your team becomes more systemized, when you're able to get the right clients. There's at least another 30 strategies to help that happen, but you want that gap to increase so that your profitability goes up. So when we're looking at this, let's just take a look at this from the perspective of 4 quarters. Okay, so every quarter has 3 months in it: Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Okay. Now, if we are, planning for profits, we should be tracking. Our profit break even to ensure that we are on track. We're able to do this. It allows us to identify when we break even. It should identify for us when we're able to hit our profit. target. Remember our target our profit target was 100K? Well, at this stage, we've made our 100K. So this allows you to ensure that you're not waiting until the end of the year to see if you're on track or off track. And look, let's face it, there's going to be variables. There's going to be curveballs. Things are going to, we're going to get calls sometimes, less calls other times. Things are going to go well. Some things are not going to go well. Now, we want to get more consistency in that and systemizing the business. But regardless, there's curveballs. So why am I sharing this with you? Well, smart contractors, the guys that are in the top 5% of the world in performance, they follow this and they love this type of analysis. Why? That last quarter between here and here is what I call bonus. Bonus, if they want to get into certain clients by lowering their prices, they can go super low. Why? Because they've already made their profits. They can almost go in at break even. I wouldn't suggest that they do that, but they can basically go in at break even, winning jobs, testing out different types of products or different types of services, and they're still good to go. Why? Because they already won the game at this stage in the cycle of their business. So if you ever wonder, how can people quote so low? This is one of the ways. If you ever wonder in the previous slide, comparing those two contractors, how can somebody be so much lower than me? Well, look, if their overheads are lower, if their sales are higher, they're going to have the advantage of beating you every time on quotes, and guess what? They're still going to be making a profit. Okay? So make sure that you plan for profits and that you track your profitability throughout the year. Don't wait until the end of the year, because guess what? The game is over. So how will these insights, guys, help you to plan for profits versus just hoping for profits? Type in the chat box. Yeah, Mike says tracking the profit over quarters or monthly is a good idea. If we were to play a game of sports, football, baseball, whatever, I don't care if you're into sports or not, they have innings. Why do they have innings? Why do they have periods? Well, they have those so that at different phases in the game, they can make adjustments, right? So that they can look up at the scoreboard and go, hey, are we winning or are we losing? And if they're tied, they can make adjustments to say, hey, you need to put this player on or take this player off. It is no different team when it comes to your business, okay? So yes, tracking, as Mike says, for profits over quarters is a good idea. I think it's a great idea, as opposed to waiting until the end of the year. John says learning to monitor more regularly where we are at in regards to targets, yeah, is key. Absolutely, guys. Okay, the third principle is it allows us basically, it allows anyone involved in quoting to know how to use the right approach so that we're not shortchanging ourselves on profit margins, okay? If you don't understand the difference between the two, if you don't apply it properly, I guarantee you right now you're risking losing between 5 to 9% or more in profits on your bottom line, okay? It's one of the main reasons, not the only reason, I stress this again, why your accountant sees a much lower profit at the end of the year than what you've been putting on your quotes. So let's look at how we can actually apply what we learned so far to quoting a job and actually, put it into play real time. So when we're looking at, let's just use the same example of profit break-even margin, for the sake of examples for today, is 35%. If you took, let's say, for example, that we've got, our direct cost, okay, let's say it's $1,000. And let me be clear about that. Any cost related to doing this job is going to be our direct cost. It could be, permits, etc. You guys get the idea, okay? If it's $1,000, now we're going to go quote a job. Most people would take the $1,000, and if this is you, it's okay, just so long as you learn from this, and they'd multiply it by 1.35. So they would put on the bottom of that quote, so minus taxes, $1,350. If this is how you go and price a job, this is what's called markup. If this is how you quote, thinking that you're making 35 points margin, you've just made a fatal error. So let's take a look. When we go to calculate profit margin, okay, again, I know we're throwing some formulas at you, but stick with me here. When you go to calculate your profit margin is basically your sales minus your expenses for that job divided by the total sales. So in this case, total sales, $1,350, right? Minus $1,000, divided by the $1,350, and this might be a shocker for some of you. Here it is, drum roll, 26% profit margin. 26% profit margin. That's a major problem. If we were using the same contractor A, that would be 1% over his break even. You know, not only would you be basically working for nothing, but imagine if there's any unforeseen errors, right? And we know there's always unforeseen errors. He's almost guaranteed to be below his break-even point. And yet he was thinking that he was quoting at 35 points, okay? So we're going to do a little bit more math here, not much more after this, okay? So how do we go about applying a proper 35% to our price? Well, if you want to do a sales price that's using what's called margin, which is what you want to do, team, this is equal to your cost divided by 1 minus your profit break-even number. Okay, so in this case, our cost, right, was $1,000 divided by 1 minus our good old 0.35, and that gives us a number of 1538. You can see the difference is huge, right? The difference is absolutely huge. So team, you've got to make sure that you're pricing properly. We calculated break-even margin, profit break-even margin. Now this is how you have got to apply this if you truly want to make the profit margins that you want to go after. Okay. Now, with that being said, there's a very quick way for you guys to actually use this. I'm just going to do one last little piece of math. Just stick with me here for a second. So don't worry about this $1,000 up top here for a second. Okay, let's not worry about that for a second. But if we wanted to use this quickly, so if we wanted to use this, instead of taking multiple steps and just have some sort of multiplier factor, all that we want to do is take, 1 divided by this 1 point, minus 0.35. So now we've got a multiplier factor, okay? So that we can just use 1.538 as a multiplier, okay? Now what's the value of this? Well, let me show you what the value of this is. I've put together for you guys a tool, the tool that I shared with you. Let's see if I can pull it up. On page 7 of this tool is what I call the margin to markup converter. So let's say, for example, let's see if I can test you guys. Okay, let's see how good your participation is. Say, for example, we wanted to make 25% margin. What would our multiplier factor be? Let's see who can be the quickest to put that into the, look at John, man. He's like a Trevor, Henry. Yeah, absolutely, okay? So if you have this posted up on the wall, share this with anybody in your company that's quoting, this is going to be a huge advantage for speed, efficiency, and consistency, okay? But again, this chart means nothing unless you know what your profit break-even is and what your break-even margin is, okay? So with that being said, I want you guys, Adam, Andy, Brian, Henry, John, Johnny, Kim, Lyle, Paul, Shirley, lots of people, Trevor, I want you guys to type in, how does this change how you look at how you quote? We're in the business to make money. There's not a company that's on this call that if we don't maximize our profits, we're not going to be able to get out of the business what we want, okay? Profits aren't the only thing, but they're a critical factor. You can't have a business without it being profitable, okay? So let's reflect, all right? It's time to start wrapping things up. Let's reflect. So principle 1, imagine we have principle 1 in place in your business where we've defined our break-even and profit break-even margin. So we know what to put on our quotes to ensure that we're quoting profitably. Principle number 2, if we get this into our business, it allows us to leverage our break-even and profit break-even margin to set targets and budgets. So we're tracking the profits. So our team knows what to do to track the profits as well. Okay? So we want to make sure that we plan and we lay things out step by step so that not only we can follow it, but our team can follow it. And the third principle allows anyone involved in quoting to know how to use the right approach so that we don't shortchange ourselves on our profit margins. So, we covered off a lot of, these principles, a lot of strategies here to help you guys. When we apply these strategies, there's only one place to go, and that's up. Okay, that's moving our profits up. So I want you to answer this question: how much is a 5 or 10% increase in profits worth to you? Now, it could be more, like some of the examples I shared with you, but what does that mean to you guys? Okay, now you can type that into the chat box. What that would mean to you. How much that would help you. That would be great. Oh, I love Curtis. Love what you said here. More time with the family. Absolutely. Yeah. Profits allow you to pay for your freedom. At Profit Contractors, my motto is to get your business to be your vehicle that pays for your freedom. And the only way that's going to happen is if you maximize your profits, right? So John says less stress. Yeah, absolutely. A lot less stress, right? Especially when we got systems that can continuously repeat that success. So which will you choose, right? The three principles that we went over, hopefully, of stress that is really important to apply to your pricing. In order to set prices that maximize profitability, you guys need to know exactly what to include in your quotes. And pricing goes beyond just adding your cost of material and labor. It doesn't have to take long to get big results, as you saw with Gate Tendaze and Tyler. And furthermore, it's never too late, right? When you know exactly what to include in your pricing, it will also help, forecast future profits, right? So there's a choice, guys. Everybody on this call, and this is a bit of psychology, right? When you commit to it, things will start going in the direction that you commit to. So the old way, you're not 100% certain you're including enough when pricing. You're not making the profits you need. You and your team are pricing blind, or the new way, right? You know exactly what to include to quote profitably. At any time, whether you're on or off track with your profits, and you have a system for quoting. You have the insights on quoting that the top 5% of contractors have when pricing. So which way are you going to pick? I'd like you guys to type that into the chat box. The old way or the new way? Yeah, everybody's saying the new way. Absolutely. I mean, wouldn't we be crazy not to? What would it mean to you, okay, to have more profits? Some of you already commented on this, but, it's not just making more money. It would mean, additional profits would mean more time with the family because you can pay for more resources to help you out. It could mean working less hours. It could mean having freedom to have more resources, So there's really a choice. You have a choice. You decide to do it the new way. You can keep trying to figure this out on your own, everybody, by trial and error, which is always the slowest way to get the results you want. And it's the fastest way to sore thumbs and frustration. Or you can do it the fast way with proven solutions to pricing better, to making more income in your business and moving your business in a more productive and profitable manner, right? So one of the things, a lot of people raise their hand that they want to get some more insights. I'm going to be giving a handful of those on the call today, the ability to register for a strategy session. It's about 25 minutes. It's sponsored by Annex. You get insights on, what's possible for your contracting business, the level of income, impact, and independence that you really want to have from it. Also, we're going to get into discovering the number one thing that's holding you back, specific to you, and get into, some of the most powerful actions that you guys can apply, the simple, quick wins. So for those that want to take advantage of it, again, there's limited spots. And I believe that those that take action should benefit. So you guys will also get, for those that get in, you'll get this quick 30-point checklist, help you guys to improve your sales, improve your leads, increase your conversion rate and your profits, which go hand in hand with what we covered off today. Make sure you take action, whether that's on today's call or in some form or fashion with what we covered off today. Don't make today a waste of time. Don't put this up on the shelf to collect dust, because the odds are you won't come back to it. And let us know if you want to have that chat.
Just a quick reminder for what we have coming up, and before I forget, thank you for that presentation, and thanks to all of you for attending. All of us hope that you have some takeaways that you can implement right away. Now, in terms of what's upcoming with Andrew, visit ebmag.com/webinars. That's where you're going to find all our upcoming training sessions, including Andrew's part 3 of 4 installment, which is Become the Obvious Choice in a Competitive Market, and that's in September with Andrew. So thanks again, Andrew, to all of you for attending, and to Schneider Electric, again, for stepping us to help us bring this training to you. I'm Anthony, editor of Electrical Business Magazine, and to all of you, have a profitable day.